It's very forward Gemara. Today's daf is Masechta Baba Kama, daf Zayin, and we will begin on the Gemara My Taima, Rabbi Shmuel. We had here a fantastic machlokis in an explanation of a pasuk. The pasuk says that if your animal tramples in somebody else's fruits, goes into somebody else's field, and tramples on his fruits or eats his fruits, right? So then the Torah says, if you don't have money, meitav sodeu, you have to give the best of your fields, or meitav kamei, the best of your vineyard, you have to pay back to pay up the damages. So the question is, whose best field do you have to pay? So the Gemara explained yesterday, and that's where we stopped, is that there's a fantastic machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel. And what's the machlokes about? In case the mazik is a rich guy, and he has a very good field, a number one field, and then he has a number two field, which is not as good. So according to Rabbi Akiva, well, since the mazik is doing the paying, he has to pay from his number one field. So if he's going to pay karka, he has to pay from that field. Rabbi Shmuel says, since the nizik is not as rich as the mazik, and if the nizik's best field equals to the mazik's second class field or worst field, so then the mazik would have to give from his worst field because that's equal to the nizik's best field. So meitav sodeu of the nizik, you go according to the best field of the nizik. That's what Rabbi Yishmael says, and that's where we were holding. Rabbi Kiva says you go meitav sodeu of mazik. So here we go, daf zayin amud beis, and we're middle of the page. My tama. So here we go. My tama. What is the reason? Rabbi Yishmael. What is the reason Rabbi Yishmael says you give the best of the nizik? So nema soda lamata, veneda soda lamala. In the pasuk, as you notice, it says the soda two times. First, it says uvir b'stei acher, that it trampled or the animal ate the fruits belonging that was in somebody else's field, and then it says meitav of his field he should pay. So the Gemara says, it says nema soda lamata. It says the word field at the end of the pasuk. V'neder soda lamala, and it says the word field at the beginning of the pasuk. Ma soda lamala the nizik, just like the field that's written in the beginning of the pasuk refers to the nizik. Af soda ha'omer lamata. So the field that's written when you start the payment, it refers to the best of the fields of the nizik, of the victim, right? Rabbi Kiva argues, he says, meitav sodeu, meitav karma yishal. The pasuk says the best of his field he should pay. Who's doing the paying? The mazik, the damager. So the heich kamashalim, you refer to the best of his best, of the mazik's best. So then the Gemara asks back, it seems Rabbi Kiva is more correct, because Rabbi Kiva, the pasuk says, whoever's doing the paying, he has to give from his best fields. So Rabbi Shmuel does not ignore that. Rabbi Yishmael says, "Ahani gzeir shava v'ahani kra." I have the gzeir shava. It's not really gzeir shava. It's just just revealing whose field are we talking about. And sometimes you use the pasuk. Ahani gzeir shava. The case of the gzeir shava is kiddush, like I just mentioned. If in this scenario, where the mazik's worst field equals to the nizik's best field, Rabbi Yishmael is going to say, you give from the nizik's best field. The mazik could give from his worst field to pay off the damages. But the pasuk, what happens in the following scenario, where the mazik's worst field is not equal to, it's actually inferior to the nizik's best field. Like in this case over here, if you can see it visualized, as I had it before. The nizik's field, the nizik's best field is more superior than the mazik's worst field. Then, in that case, Rabbi Shmuel would agree to Rabbi Akiva that you pay from the mazik's best field. And that's what the Gemara is about to say. The Ahani Kra, sometimes you follow the pasuk that the mazik has to give from his best field, Kegoin. For example, the Islay Lamazik Idius Viziburis. The Mazik has Idius and Zaburis, best and inferior field. The Idius, the Nizik, and there's best, the Nizik also has a best field. But the Ziburis, the Mazik, the worst field of the Mazik, Loy Shavya Ki Idius the Nizik, is not equal to the best of the Nizik. Therefore, he can't get away and pay from his Ziburis because that's not the Meitav of the Nizik. So therefore, the Meshalim Leimi Meitav the day. So therefore, the Mazik will have to pay from his own best. The Leimotze Amalei, he can't tell the Nizik, Ta'at Gavin Miziburis. He can't tell him, oh, take from my worst field, because it's not equal to the Nizik's best field. Alagavim Meitav, the Nizik will collect from the Mazik his best field. Now, that was the opinion, and that explained the machlokes to Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva also added, Rabbi Kiva said first that when Nezikin, you have to pay from the best of the Mazik's field. That's what we learned in the first thing that Rabbi Kiva said. And then Rabbi Kiva said, if you damaged Hegdish, certainly you would have to pay from your best, the best of the Mazik's field, right? So the Gemara wants to know, what did Rabbi Kiva mean by the Kal V'chomer Lehegdish? My Kal V'chomer Lehegdish. What do you mean, Kal V'chomer Lehegdish? What does that mean? That when you're paying Hegdish, you have to pay from the best? Ilema, do you want to say, the case is the Narnak Torah de Don, the Torah de Hegdish. Our ox, your ox, damage or gore the ox belonging to Hegdish. That can't be, and often you're going to find mazik the whole seder Baba Kama. There's a lot of shocking things that you find. If your ox gores the ox of Hegdish, you don't have to pay. Share'eu Amar Chamar. The Torah says only if you gore the ox of your friend you have to pay. V'loy shar Hegdish, but not if you gore the ox of Hegdish. So if you gore the ox of Hegdish, you're potter from paying. So what's Rabbi Kiva talking about? That you have to pay Hegdish from the best. You don't have to pay Hegdish anything. Elo la'omer, Rabbi Kiva is referring to a following scenario. A person says, "Harei alai mona lebedek habayis." He promises to give 100,000 a mona to bedek habayis, right? 100 zuz to bedek habayis. So now it's a commitment. It's a commitment. So now the gizbar, the treasurer of the Beis Hamikdash, if he wants to collect v'shakol mebidis, he can collect from this guy's best field. And therefore, if he didn't pay the tab, the commitment, then he has to pay from his best field. Says the Gemara, that cannot be true either. That the person who made the commitment is only like as if he's like a regular debtor. He owes the money to Hegdish. And we go to now top of Zayin Amar Aleph, Ubal Choy Bebeininis. When you're paying a debt, you only pay from the middle of your fields. You don't have to give from your best fields. You're going to say, Rabbi Kiva, Kol Bachoy Nami Be'idius. Are you going to say Rabbi Kiva holds every debtor has to pay from his best field? You know, in Kilimifrach, still, Mala Balchoiv, a regular Balchoiv, who, let's say, what a Ruvain O Shimon, he pays from Idius because Shekain Yipa Koichem ben Azakim. Because if Ruvain, let's say, damaged Shimon, he would have to pay from his best fields. So when he's a debtor, when he borrowed money and he doesn't have money to pay back, that makes sense. He pays from Idius. But there's no Kal V'chomer Lehegdish, Toime Behegdish, Shehura Koichem ben Azakim. Hegdish is always one step lower than a regular civil transaction between two parties, because with Hegdish, you'd only have to pay Hegdish if you damage Hegdish. We just said Share'eu Amar Chamana, but not Shar Hegdish. So therefore, Hegdish is always one step lower than any transaction between Reuven and Shimon, so to speak. So what did Rabbi Kiva say? Kal V'chomer Lehegdish, that you would have to pay from the Idius. There is no Kal V'chomer. Hegdish is lower than two transactions between Reuven and Shimon. Answers the Gemara, not true. Loilam, we're going to say it like this: the Nigach Torah de Dan, the Torah de Hegdish. Really, we're going to go back to our first case, and the case is talking about the ox, our ox, Gore, the ox of Hegdish. The Kakashi law. You had a question. You should be potter. That it's only if you gore your friend's ox you have to pay, but not the shar shel Hegdish. Rabbi Kiva has a new opinion. Savalak Rab Shimon ben Menasya. He holds like Rab Shimon ben Menasya. The Tanya we learned in a brisa. Rab Shimon ben Menasya oimer shar shel Hegdish nogach shar shel Heged. The shar belonging to the Beis Hamikdash, gore the ox belonging to a regular person, potter. The Beis Hamikdash doesn't have to pay. And the opposite is even worse. Shar shel hedyet shnogach shar shel hedyet. If the ox of a plain person gored the ox of hegdish, now normally if it's the first time you're a tam, you pay half the damages. But by hegdish, because the Torah says only a shore eyu, there's a difference between tam and muad. But if you gore the ox of hegdish, it's even worse. Bein tam and bein muad mishal nezek shalom. Whether it's a tam or whether it's a muad, you always pay nezek shalom. Simple. So that's why Kiva says, if a regular case you pay meitav from the mazik, so certainly when you gore when you gore the ox of hegdish, you would pay meitav of the mazik. So now the Gemara just asks one question. Ihachi Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva. You're saying there's a double machlokes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva, whether you pay the meitav of the nizik or the meitav of the mazik. And Rabbi Kiva just adds one thing that even by hegdish you have to pay the meitav of the mazik. How do you know? How do you know the idius the nizik viziburis the mazik pligi? How do you know they're arguing whether you pay this idius of the nizik or the ziburis of the mazik? Like we just said, in the first case, you pay this. Rabbi Akiva says you pay this, the azik, and Rabbi Shmuel says you pay this, this one, which is equal the ziburis of the mazik. How do you know they're arguing about that? Everybody will hold that you pay the best of the nizik. And they're just arguing about hegdish. Do you have to pay hegdish when you gore the animal for hegdish? Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Kiva holds like Rabbi Shimon that you have to pay when you gore hegdish's ox, and Rabbi Shmuel holds like the Rabbanon you don't have to pay. So the Gemara says no. That can't be just the machlekes between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Kiva. In Cain, my boy loy ba hakosiv. Why did Rabbi Kiva add these words that the pasuk says you have to pay idius? If he's not arguing on Rabbi Shmuel on what idius you have to pay, so why mention that? So it must be that he's arguing in what type of idius you have to pay. According to Rabbi Shmuel, it was the nizik, and it comes Rabbi Kiva and says it has to be the mazik. My kal v'chomer lehegdish. What kind of kal v'chomer is the hegdish? Since the idiot Rabbi Kiva is talking about the nizik and he's trying to make it lighter, that the mazik you give from his ziburis, what's the kal v'chomer to hegdish? That's just light. According to Rabbi Kiva, you should go one step higher. Hegdish, you should pay the idiots of the mazik. And the further question is simple. Ha'amar Rav Ashi Tanya behead. We have an open brisa. That's the pasuk says meitav sadeo meitav karmei shalim, and here it clearly says Rabbi Yishmael's opinion is meitav sadeo shall nizik or meitav karmei shall nizik the Rabbi Yishmael, and Rabbi Kiva meitav sadeo shall mazik or meitav karmei shall mazik. So we see clearly that they're arguing whose best do you have to pay. Rabbi Yishmael says it's the best of the nizik, the victim, and Rabbi Kiva says it's the best of the mazik. Nu Gemara, Rami lay Abaya l'Rava. Abaya had a stira on the psukim in the to Rava. Abai asked this question. It's a contradiction of psukim. Look at this pasuk. The pasuk says, "Meitav sodeo, meitav karma yishal." You have to pay the best of the fields and the best of the vineyards, right? But then, if you look at by bor, the Torah says, if someone opens a pit in the middle of Queens Boulevard and something happens, an ox or a donkey falls in there, Baal habar yishalem. The Baal habar has to pay kesef. And he has to pay money. Now the pasuk could stop over there. Yoshev Labalov, he has to return something to the owner, to the victim. So here the pasuk says you pay money, and then it says you have to return something to the owner. So there was a stira. It says ksiv meitav sadeo meitav karma yishalan. So Rabbi asked the Rabbi, it says the best, you pay the best. Meitav and midachrin Allah. You can only pay the best. You can, whatever you're doing, pay the best of. But but we learned in a brisa, it's mashma that you can't pay anything else. You can't pay anything else. That's what meitav in midachrin aloi. You can't pay anything else. So it's only karka you could pay. Well, Tanya, we learned in the brisa, Yoshev l'rabbis shava kesef. Yoshev comes to tell you that you don't have to pay karka, real estate. You can give anything. I feel a subim, even dish towels you can give to pay your obligation of damages. So what is it? You have to give prop, or do you have to give dish towels? So the Gemara says, "Lo kasha." I'm going to answer it. Kam midaitoi, kam bakarcha. Beautiful teretz. If you agree right away that you did the damage, then they allowed you to pay, to get away with paying by using subin, shmatas, to pay up your obligation. Kan balkarcha. But if they force you to go to Bezdin, if they force the owner of the guy that dug the pit to come to Bezdin, or the owner of the ox to come to Bezdin, so he's causing litigation, then we make it worse for him. That if he's going to pay, he's going to have to pay with real estate, the best of his real estate. And Alma'ula b'dreiv Raviloi, Deikinami, I'll prove it to you that this is correct. Ksiv, the pasuk says Yishalem. If you have to pay, Bal Korchai means if you're being forced to pay, you have to pay the best of your fields. Amalei Abaya, so Abaya says, Meet Ksiv, Yushulam. Does the pasuk say Yushulam? Yishalem Ksiv. Midaitoi mashma. The word Yishulam, if the pasuk would say Meitev Karma Yushulam, means that the Bezdin is forcing to pay. Yishalem means Midaitoi mashma. And Mishalem means he's paying on his own volition. So you can't say that Meitev Karma, the best of your field, is talking about a case where Bezdin is forcing him to pay. Yishalem is implying, the word Yishalem means he's paying on his volition, that he's paying on his own. So, and yet the Torah says he should pay the best of his field. So how do you resolve the stira, the contradiction in Psukim? One pasuk says you pay the best of your fields. One pasuk says you can pay with money, or you can pay with the shmatis. So how do you resolve the contradiction? El Amar Baya said like this: Kidamar. The way we resolve the contradiction is first know about another contradiction, another brisa. When you find the pshat in that brisa, you'll be able to understand the contradiction. The Tanya, we learned in the brisa. We know that either you want to be very rich or you want to be poor, so you can be eligible for all the social programs, right? So the same thing, lahavdil, in Ma'aser Ani, a person who has 200 zuz, and more was not entitled to take Ma'aser Ani because he's not poor. But the Brisa says, but if you, let's say you have 199 zuz, then you can take Ma'aser Ani of 1,000 zuz at one time. You can take a lot at one time. So because the threshold, the marker is 200 zuz. So the Gemara says, a man has field, vineyards, and houses, and they're worth 200 zuz. But he can't find anybody to buy them, right? He needs cash. So then he's allowed to take up to 100 of value of Ma'aser Ani, and the field itself will be able to sold for half price. And he can't take 1,000 at one time because he's not poor, because he has fields that are technically worth 200. Vahavi Bamar, and we asked the question, what is going on over here? How do you explain the brisa? Hey Chidami, what's the case? Let's say there was a recession and all the prices of real estate went down, and his real estate went down to below 200. Then he should be entitled to take at one shot 1,000. Why is he limited to only taking 100 zuz from the Ma'aser Ani? Because the whole world, all the real estate prices went down. Ella must be, the case is something different. Everybody's real estate is worth a lot. V'didei, and his real estate, I did the oil v'nafik al zuze zal ari, because everybody knows he's desperate for cash. He has a cash flow problem, and he's looking for money, and therefore his land went down to below 200 zuz. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, so we allow him to take 100. So the Gemara, we go to Zion Amabeis. The Gemara says, no. We shouldn't give him anything. Why? Because at the end of the day, his land is worth 200 zuz. Just because he's being offered less money because he's desperate for money doesn't mean that the land itself is not worth 200 zuz. So he's not entitled to take Ma'aser Ani. Allah, and Mar answered, that the Bryce is talking about this case. When you buy a plowed up field, generally you buy it in the summer, you plant in Tishrei and Mar Cheshvan, and you reap, you harvest it in Nisan. Okay, now in this guy, it's if you're and nobody's buying land in Tishrei. So therefore, a guy has land worth 200 zuz, okay? The biyayim in Nisan, if you sold it in Nisan time, yakra arsay, it's worth 200 zuz. Uviyayim in Tishrei, but if you buy it in Tishrei, zal arsay, it's below 200 zuz. The kuliyama, every person, not riyad Nisan zabni, everybody person, if you don't need to sell, you wait till the season, the selling season, which is a Nisan time. But this guy, because he needs the money now, he can sell it right now. And therefore, but he's technically not a poor guy, because if he would wait to Nisan, it would be worth more than 200 zuz. So therefore, even though now he's forced to sell it in Tishrei and it's worth less, we only allow him to take Meiser Ani half. The most real estate will fall, and this is a good thing to remember. What is in the worst recession, or the worst downflow, or the worst off season, real estate will never sell 50% below where it sold before. So up until a half, which is up until 100 zuz, it could fall like that. So therefore, he's permitted to take Meiser Ani. Tvei lav urche mezo. But more than 50%, we won't allow him to take more than 100 zuz, because his real estate itself is not going to fall below 100. Says the Gemara, V'achinami gabim nezakin. So let's resolve that. Let's apply this between the stiras of psukim that say you pay real estate or you pay shmatas. V'achinami gabim nezakin. Dina be'idias. Really, nezakin is with idias. V'i amalei ihu. If the person says Havli Bainis Tbei Purta, let's say the Nizik says, I really don't want Idias, your best field. I want your medium field, right? Your Baininus field, but just give me a little bit more, right? Because why would he want his Baininus field? Because perhaps he has another field that's near that. So he wants the Baininus field of the Maziks. Amalei, so the Mazik could say, you could take my bay. If you're taking Idias, then you can take according to the price of now, right? Which is the cheaper price. And you'll get less. You'll get more field. V'iloi, but if you're not taking the cheaper price, shakal ki yukra del kameh, you take according to the more expensive price later on, which means that I'm going to give you Baininus, but what it's worth in Tishrei. Even though I'm supposed to pay you, what's it worth in Nisan? Even though right now it's Tishrei and I'm supposed to pay you, but since you're not taking what you're supposed to take, you're supposed to take Idias, but you're taking Baininus, so now I could force you to take Baininus at the price that it will be in Nisan as more, and that's what the pasuk says. Kesef Yosef Afilu Subim, that even Subim, that if you want to take that field, you have to take it at the higher price, which is you're going to get less field. If you're taking a lower field, you got to take it at the higher price, because you're not taking what the Torah wanted you to take, which was Idias. Maskef lo Rav Acha bar Yaakov, so Rav Acha bar Yaakov questioned that. In Cain, harata koichan shel nizokin eitzel beinis v'ziburis. The victim now loses his power. And the Torah, if you think about the attitude of the Torah wanted to give power to the victim, to the nizik. The Rachmana Omameitav, the Torah tells you should give the victim from your best. Ba'at amret mi beinis v'ziburis loy, to take out the nami. You take from beinis v'ziburis, no, you have to take it at the higher price where it's going to be worth 6 months from now. That doesn't fit in to the attitude of the Torah. So what is that? So it's not compared to nizakin. If we're going to compare that case by Meiser Ani, compare it to a case of somebody who owes somebody money, a Bal Chayv, a debtor. Bal Chayv dina bebeinis. The lender can collect from his baininess, from the person he lent the money to, from the borrower, he can collect from the middle fields. That's the halacha. The amalei, but if the lender says to the borrower, Havli ziburis, give me your worst field, tfei purta, give me a little bit more. So amalei, so the lender, the borrower could say to the lender, if you would take your normal baininess field, shakal kadahasha, take it at the price right now. but if you're not taking what the halacha tells you to take, which is baininess, then and you want ziburis just extra shekol kiyukudukame, then take the ziburis as it's priced 6 months from now in Tishrei. That's what he can tell him, and that's what we're going to compare the brisa of Ma'aser Ani to this case of Balchai. So Maskiv Lo Rav Acha Ber Rav Ika, Rav Acha Ber Rav Ika asked in Cain Alta Delos B'fnei Lavim. You're taking away the power from the lender, and the Rabbanan always wanted to open up the capital markets. That lenders should want to lend their money, and here, if you're going to put this screw and make it harder for the lender to collect the land that he wants, then he's not going to want to lend anymore. The Amalei, because the lender will say, if I had my cash back, I can buy whatever I want. But now that I lent you the money, you're forcing me to take back the land that I could collect from according to the price that it's worth later on. If you want to compare it, let's say a woman got a get in Tishrei, and really she's supposed to collect from Ziburis, from the worst field. That's the din of Ksubas Isha. If she would say, Havli Bainis Batzipurta, I want you to collect from a better field, but just give me a little less. On this, the husband could say, Amalah, Ishakos Kedinach, if you could take your Ziburis field, Shekol Kedahashi, you take it what it's worth in Tishrei, which when it's worth less, you'll get more field. The Eloi, but if you don't take it now and you want to up your what you want, and you want to take from the Baininis, Shakle, then you have to take the Baininis, Kiyukadul Kameh, as it's worth in Tishrei, but not what it's worth now. And so that's how you compare that brisa to another scenario where a person is owed money and he wants a different field than what he is halachically supposed to take. Anyway, the question, and this is we're going to end right here. The one more question. The question is, how do you resolve the stiras of psukim? B'kol mokum kasha. We still remain with a question. One pasuk says that you have to give the best of your field, and one pasuk says that if you want, the mazik could pay with shmatis. How do you resolve that? Amalei Rava. So Rava says no. The pasuk is one and the same. The pasuk is trying to say that if you're going to pay whatever you're going to pay, if you're going to pay computers, you got to pay the best computers. If you're going to pay with shmatis, you have to give the best shmatis. And that's the universal things. Whatever you're paying, pay from the best. Says the Gemara, that's not a good teretz. The pasuk says only when you're paying from your fields you pay the best. But shmatis, you can pay. You don't have to give the best shmatis. So the Gemara explains the stiras of psukim, and this will end. Elki Asra Papa Rav Huram Rav Yeshua Mebei Rav. Rav Papa came from the yeshiva of Rav Pershu. They explained it. Kol midi meitavu. Any type of item that you pay, if you're paying with computers or books or anything like that, that's called paying the best. Why? Because there is you could always sell it. You could sell it on eBay. If you can't find in your neighborhood somebody to purchase it, then you can find somebody else on the internet to buy it from you in another city. So it's very easily to turn movable items into cash. So there the Torah has no restriction that you have to give the best movable item, because anything that's movable can easily be turned into cash. Levar ma'ara, except if you're paying with property, there the Torah required the mazik the laces law mimeitav. He has to pay from the best fields. Why? Because when you have a property that's the best property, the best value, or the best field property, then there's people will line up to purchase it, and that could easily be turned into cash to make up for the loss that the nizik had. And therefore, the Torah was only restrictive on paying meitav only if you're paying sadeu, if you're paying from property, from real estate. But if you're paying with shmatis, you don't have to give the best of the shmatis, and because that could easily be turned into cash. And that's how you resolve the contradiction of the psukim. Okay.